Hi folks, two knives here that appear certainly very similar, if not identical. They're both really from the same source, JE made. The difference between them is this one here is a sort of £70 knife and this one here is 3 times that. But what are the fundamental differences? Well, the obvious differences are in materials. This one is D2 tool steel for the blade and machined G10 for the handles, and the handles in this case have no liners, there's just a back spring, 2 shaped G10 scales, and that's it. This one here has S35VN steel, titanium, and the bolsters and liners are machined as one piece, and then you've a very nice carbon fibre for the scales. The screw patterns look different, but in actual fact they're really the same. If you undo these 2 screws, the scale comes off and you're left looking at 2 screws that look rather like those behind there, and the pivot screw obviously is the same. So obviously material differences make up quite a considerable change in the difference in the price structures, but there's more to it than just that. There's a different level of working done in the two knives. So for example, this one here has a stone-washed blade, which can be done obviously in a machine. You throw it in and it comes out stone-washed, then it's sharpened. This one here has a hand-rubbed satin finish, which has different directions of the satin depending on whether you're on the lower part of the blade here, it's coming this way, on the upper part of the swedge it's going away from me, and on here where it says J made, it's the pattern goes along that way. So, and of course, as I said, you've got machined titanium bolsters stroke liners, and then a machined piece of carbon fibre which has to be fitted one to the other, whereas this is just a straightforward machined piece of T10. Now, having said all of that, the quality of workmanship on this knife here is just as fine as the quality of workmanship on here. It's just some slightly less human intensive processes. One must assume that this G10 is machined in a CNC machine or something similar in one piece and then simply screwed together. Whether there is much in the way of hand finishing to make sure that everything lines up, and I couldn't say for certain. I don't think this knife is hafted because there is, well, almost unnoticeable, but if you look for it you can see some degree of imprecision between the scales and the back spring. Not enough to criticise it and call it a fault, but enough to know that it's not been put on, it's not been hafted to grind everything to match. Whereas on this one everything matches up absolutely perfectly. There are no gaps, no finishing errors. So there's clearly a change there. The other thing that is different is that there's a dimensional change, and it's almost imperceptible, but once you start to look closely there are things you can see. Now, the shape of, focus please, the shape of that part just in front of the nail nick is different together. They're both very sharp, I should point out as well. It's different to the shape on this one. This one is longer. So that was the first thing I noticed, but then you start to notice the nail nick itself is actually the same size. It might not look like it quite because one's slightly further away here, but the amount of metal either side of the nail nick is greater in this one and lesser in this one. Don't know if you can really see the difference there, but it's noticeable if not necessarily significant. Now, once you start to get that into your mind, then every other, if I put these little down here, I'm just going to zoom right in close. If it'll let me, see how close it'll let me zoom. Once you've noticed that, then you start to look more closely at everything else. And you realise that the swedge on this one is slightly wider and slightly narrower. The blade thickness on each of them let's get these to balance up like this. The blade thickness is slightly different. It's very slightly thicker on this one, very slightly thinner on that one. And that then takes you down to the back springs. Oh. I should really have thought about a way to make these sit up before I started. The back springs, very slightly thicker on this one, very slightly narrower on that one, and so forth. And all over, there's just that very small difference. Is that significant? I don't know. But what I do know is that there is a difference. They're not 100% identical. So, does that justify the extra price? I don't know. Maybe it does to you, maybe it doesn't. Personally, I think it does. To me, it does. This knife here is on loan to me from Paddy's potato peelers. He sent it over for me to do a comparison, and I'm going to send them over to him to have a look. Now, I think if you want a knife just to have in your pocket and to use, then it's much of a muchness. They both do the same job. D2 tool steel. I know it seems to be the steel of every Chinese knife out there nowadays, but it's a good steel. My Andre de Villiers knives, which are some of my most expensive, are D2 tool steel, and they're none the worse for it. So it works perfectly well. S35VN is a very high-end steel. It was developed, I believe, between Crucible Steels and Chris Reeves in order to give the best pocket knife steel one could have. Now, I don't think it still is, but it was conceived to be that. Another thing that changes, I think the point of balance is slightly different on these two. Again, trying to do this through a camera lens with dodgy hands is going to be a mistake, but it's rather further back on this one, whereas on this one here, because the titanium is milled out and replaced with carbon fibre, it takes the point of balance rather further forward to more or less on this line here, which is just slightly nicer when it comes to using it. But you know, these are 3-inch pocket knives. They're not 6-inch Bowies or 8-inch Bowie knives where a point of balance becomes a significant thing. The weight of these is pretty marginal, and there's not much difference in the weight between them either. I haven't actually weighed them, but one doesn't feel noticeably heavier than the other. This G10 is quite light. The fact that a lot of the titanium is milled out of this makes it relatively light, and this is about 15% lighter than the full titanium version, for example. Now, but whichever way you look at it, these are both really, really nice knives. I think this one is definitely the dressier, and even allowing for the difference in price, I still think I'm happier with this one than I would have been with this one on its own. But it doesn't mean it's a bad knife at all. What I have noticed is that my usual, my favourite everyday carry knives, of which I've 3 of these, but this is the PK70 from Enzo, is it's been pushed out of my pocket by the JE made knife. I don't really know why. This is still a lovely knife. I still like it. This is in fact G10 titanium bolster with G10 scale, but it's polished and shaped, so it's quite nice. It looks nice. I find this a very useful blade shape, and actually once you just look at the edge shape, it's not actually that dissimilar. It's a little bit recurve here, this is a little bit flatter, but you've a belly and a point, which is probably the most practical shape of blade. They fit nicely, both fit nicely in my pocket. This one does have a clip, which is quite a good deep carry clip, but generally when I'm out and about I like to carry my knife in a slip in my pocket, so I use one of these Simon Davidson slips, and I prefer that because UK is such a funny place. People really do worry about carrying of knives, and to simply not have it on show is just a good thing. So, but anyway, what I was really trying to show was the comparison between these two knives. They're both really nice. If you've got 70 quid, buy this one. If you can afford the 200 quid, I'd go for this every day. It's just that much nicer. It's got that much more finish to it. It's nicer in terms of materials, and I have a lot of knives, but I would forgo an awful lot of knives to have a small number of knives as good as this one. This is right up there as one of my very, very favourite knives that I own, and if I had to get rid of my knife collection and keep 5 or 10 knives or whatever, this one would be one of the very last on my ever shortening shortlist. I would see an awful lot of knives go before I would see this one go. So there we are. Thank you very much. The JE made.